Travel is supposed to broaden the mind, but for some of my fellow countrymen, it just expands the list of places they are permanently banned from. We are looking at 49 specific moments where Americans packed their passports but apparently left their brains at the departure gate. This isn't just about being confused by a map. This is about the kind of aggressive entitlement and spectacular stupidity that makes the rest of the world want to build a wall around us. 1. The Wieliczka. Salt mine in Poland is a subterranean masterpiece, a UNESCO World Heritage Site featuring breathtaking chapels and statues carved entirely by hand over centuries. It is a place of deep history and reverence, or at least it was until an American tourist decided to treat it like a giant pretzel. Ignoring the guide, the sanctity of the location, and basic germ theory, he leaned forward and aggressively licked the wall, just to make sure it was really salt. The guide confirmed that yes, it was salt, and also that he had just ingested the dried saliva of the 3 million people who visited before him. Apparently, enjoying history visually wasn't enough. He needed to marinate his tongue in it. 2. The Scottish Highlands are legendary for rugged beauty and weather that can shift from pleasant stroll to hypothermia in the blink of an eye. This geographical fact was apparently lost on one American hiker who decided to tackle a serious mountain trail dressed for a pool party in Florida. Wearing nothing but flimsy flip-flops, cargo shorts, and a thin t-shirt, he strutted up the mountain, confident that his American passport would protect him from the laws of thermodynamics. It didn't. A rescue team had to be scrambled to carry his blue, shivering body off the peak, wrapping him in thermal blankets like a very regretful, frozen burrito, while the locals shook their heads in disbelief. 3. A busy train station in Mumbai is less of a transportation hub and more of a synchronized, chaotic event involving millions of people. It operates on momentum and survival instincts, not customer service. Yet, one American visitor was spotted standing on the edge of a platform, frantically waving and whistling at a departing local train as if it were a yellow taxi in Manhattan. He genuinely seemed to believe the engineer would see him, slam on the brakes of a 1,000-ton machine, and reverse back to the station just to pick him up. The train, unsurprisingly, kept moving, leaving him waving at the smog and proving that main character syndrome doesn't actually control public transit in India. 4. There is a special level of entitlement required to look at an ancient archaeological wonder and think, you know what this needs? A little dusting. At the Treasury in Petra, Jordan, a tourist was admiring the 2,000-year-old sandstone facade and decided it looked a bit grimy. Instead of respecting the delicate nature of the site, she fished a wet wipe out of her purse and began aggressively scrubbing a section of the carving. A horrified guide had to physically intervene before she managed to chemically erode millennia of history with a lemon-scented towelette. It is a miracle she didn't ask to speak to the manager about the lack of janitorial services in the desert. 5. The Christ the Redeemer statue in Rio de Janeiro stands tall with arms outstretched, a massive symbol of peace and faith watching over Brazil. However, to one ambitious American tech enthusiast, it looked less like a holy icon and more like a prop for a sick Instagram video. He decided to fly his drone illegally close, attempting to make the device high-five the statue's hand. He didn't get the viral shot he wanted. Instead, he got the immediate attention of the Brazilian Federal Police, who confiscated his expensive toy and handed him a massive fine. It turns out that buzzing a religious monument with a flying robot is generally considered a bad idea in any language. 6. In Lisbon, a 24-year-old American decided that simply looking at art wasn't enough. He needed to be physically part of it. He climbed onto the pedestal of a 126-year-old statue of Dom Sebastião outside the Rossio train station, trying to get the perfect selfie angle with the Portuguese king. As he shifted his weight to find his good side, the statue lost its balance and crashed to the ground, shattering into unfixable pieces. In seconds, he destroyed a century of cultural heritage. His quest for a new profile picture ended with him trying to explain to the police why his vanity was more important than their national history. 7. One of the strangest legacies of Pablo Escobar in Colombia is a feral population of hippos that took over the Magdalena River. These are 3-ton, territorial killing machines that kill more people in Africa than lions do. But for one American tourist, the danger didn't register. Ignoring the fact that he wasn't at a petting zoo, he wandered away from his tour group to try and snap a selfie while petting one of the animals. He is incredibly lucky that the hippo was merely annoyed rather than hungry, chasing him off instead of snapping him in half. It seems he missed the memo that animals raised by a drug lord don't have a great customer service policy. 8. Mount Vesuvius is famous for burying the entire city of Pompeii in ash, a historical reminder of nature's terrifying power. But for a young American tourist, it was just a really inconvenient hole where he dropped his smartphone. After ignoring multiple forbidden path signs to get a better selfie angle, he fumbled his device into the crater. Instead of accepting the loss, he actually climbed down into the active volcano to retrieve it. Naturally, he got stuck and required a specialized mountain rescue team to rappel in and save him. He risked his life and the lives of the rescuers, proving that for some people being offline for an hour is a fate worse than death. 9. Driving in the United Kingdom is already a cognitive test for Americans accustomed to the right side of the road. But one tourist in a rental car decided to face the ultimate final boss: a multi-lane roundabout. Completely paralyzed by the flow of traffic and the concept of yielding to the right, he panicked and simply stopped his car dead center in the circle. Then, in a stroke of genius, he tried to reverse out of the flow of traffic to reset his position. This resulted in a symphony of car horns, angry gestures, and a lesson in British creative vocabulary that you definitely won't find in any polite travel guide. 10. There is an unwritten but sacred commandment on the London Underground during the morning commute. Thou shalt not speak, and thou shalt definitely not make eye contact. An American tourist, however, treated the tube like a networking event, providing a loud, non-stop monologue of his entire vacation itinerary into his phone on a packed, dead-silent train. While no one physically confronted him, because that would be rude, he was subjected to the collective, soul-crushing power of 100 silent, passive-aggressive British glares. The sheer atmospheric pressure of disapproving tuts and eye rolls was enough to derail the train, but he remained blissfully, loudly oblivious. 11. In Vietnam, the street food scene is legendary, and transactions are handled in the local currency, the dong. A bowl of world-class pia chow might cost the equivalent of $1 or $2. One American tourist, after finishing his meal, confidently tried to pay the street vendor with a crisp, new $100 bill. He seemed genuinely confused when the vendor, who likely doesn't see that much cash in a week, couldn't break a bill that represents a month's salary. He stood there waiting for change in a currency that runs in the millions, apparently thinking the street cart was a mobile branch of the Federal Reserve. 12. The changing of the guard at Buckingham Palace is a display of centuries-old military precision. These men in bearskin hats are active-duty soldiers with automatic weapons, not Disney cast members. That distinction was lost on an American tourist who, on a particularly hot day, felt bad for one of the stoic guards. Breaking every protocol imaginable, he walked past the barrier and tried to offer the on-duty soldier a can of warm Coca-Cola. He was immediately intercepted by police, narrowly avoiding a bayonet to the ribs, and learned that His Majesty's Guard does not require hydration assistance from random guys named Brad. 13. One of the most common pieces of advice for traveling in Egypt is simple. Do not drink the tap water. It is a rule written in stone, much like the pyramids. One tourist, bragging about his stomach of steel and superior immune system, decided to prove the guide wrong. He took a heroic chug from the hotel tap to assert dominance. His victory lap lasted exactly 45 minutes before he spent the next 4 days engaged in biological warfare with the hotel toilet. He went to see the Sphinx, but the only riddle he solved was how many times a human body can violently repent in 24 hours. 14. Here is a pro tip for the digital age. If you are going to break into a historic religious site after hours, maybe don't document your crime in 4K resolution. two American influencers on a trip to Thailand decided it would be content gold to sneak into an ancient, abandoned temple at night. Not only did they illegally trespass on sacred ground, but they also posted videos of themselves dancing and making ghost noises. The local police didn't even have to investigate. They just watched the Instagram story, drove to the hotel tagged in the post, and arrested them before the upload had even finished buffering. 15. Singapore is famous for being incredibly clean, orderly, and having a specific law for just about everything. An American tourist, seeing a flock of pigeons, decided to have a magical movie moment and share his sandwich with them, tossing crumbs all over the pristine sidewalk. He was quickly approached by an unamused official and handed a fine equivalent to several hundred US. He stood there, bread in hand, stunned to learn that in Singapore, feeding the birds isn't a whimsical act of kindness. It's technically littering and aiding and abetting flying rats. 16. The classic 1950s cars in Cuba are beautifully maintained relics of a bygone era, kept running through sheer ingenuity and duct tape. They are rolling museums, not modern Ubers. One tourist, while riding in a pristine '57 Chevy, had the audacity to complain to the driver that the vehicle didn't have any USB charging ports or a reliable Wi-Fi hotspot. He was completely missing the point of the experience, treating a 60-year-old mechanical miracle like it was a defective Tesla. The driver likely considered leaving him on the side of the road to find a charger in the nearest sugarcane field. 17. The Ganges River in India is one of the most sacred waterways in Hinduism, a place for spiritual cleansing and rituals. It is also, objectively, not a place you want to drink from directly. An American tourist saw the devotion of the locals and thought, "What a great place to test out my new survival gear." He was spotted on the riverbank, amidst praying worshippers, casually sipping the murky river water through a high-tech purifying straw like he was field testing gear for an apocalypse. It was a perfect blend of cultural insensitivity and a gross misunderstanding of sanitation limits. 18. If you visit Costa Rica, you should know that the white-faced capuchin monkeys are not cute friends. They are organized crime syndicates with tails. One American tourist learned this the hard way when he tried to lure a monkey closer for a selfie using a shiny object, his rental car keys. The monkey, a master of its craft, snatched the keys from his hand and immediately scampered up a 50-foot tree. The man was left standing there, looking up, forced to negotiate the return of his vehicle with a tiny primate who now held all the leverage and had no interest in bargaining. 19. Haggling in a Moroccan souk is a respectful dance of commerce, a social interaction with rules. Offered a fair price for a handmade rug that took weeks to weave, an American tourist decided to counter with an offer of 10% of the asking price, followed by a loud lecture on global market efficiency and supply and demand. The shopkeeper didn't get angry. He just smiled. The crowd laughed, and the rug stayed exactly where it was. The tourist left empty-handed, having learned that the art of the deal doesn't translate well when you're insulting the guy who owns the merchandise. 20. The Korean Jjimjilbang, or public bathhouse, is a sanctuary for quiet relaxation, steam, and silence. It is a place where naked strangers coexist in a delicate, unspoken truce of peace. It is definitely not a sports bar. But one American tourist missed that memo entirely. Sitting in a 150-degree sauna, surrounded by meditating locals, he decided this was the perfect time to loudly analyze his fantasy football draft. He broke the sacred silence with a monologue about quarterback stats and injury reports, treating the wooden sweatbox like his personal living room. The locals didn't say a word, but the collective psychic energy of 20 angry, sweating people wishing him out of existence was palpable. 21. The Grand Canyon is a geological masterpiece carved over millions of years by the Colorado River and the sheer force of time. Its shifting colors are a result of the sun's angle on ancient rock layers. This concept was apparently too analog for one American tourist. He approached a park ranger with complete sincerity and asked, "What time do you guys turn on the colored floodlights?" He genuinely believed the natural wonder was just a massive, taxpayer-funded laser show that ran on a timer. The ranger had to gently explain that the sun, a celestial body, does not have an on switch or a dimmer setting controlled by the National Park Service. 22. There is a very specific reason museums ban flash photography. Intense bursts of light degrade pigments and ruin centuries-old masterpieces. At the Uffizi Gallery in Florence, this rule is practically gospel, but one American tourist decided that preserving Botticelli's The Birth of Venus was less important than his low-quality vacation snapshot. Ignoring the signs, he unleashed a strobe light powerful enough to signal passing aircraft, blinding everyone in the room. He didn't get a great photo, but he did get swarmed by Italian security guards who treated him like an art thief. Apparently, his desire for a well-lit souvenir was not a valid excuse for slowly destroying the Renaissance. 23. The Tegalalang rice terraces in Bali are an ancient, intricate irrigation system and the livelihood of local farmers. To a certain type of American influencer, however, they are just a free green background for a vanity project. One young woman, seeking that perfect candid shot of herself looking whimsically into the distance, waded deep into the mud. In the process, she trampled actual crops, destroying the seedlings that someone relies on to eat. She got her photo, sure, but she also proved that for some people, destroying a local food source is a small price to pay for 34 likes and a fire emoji from a bot account. 24. The Dead Sea is not a sea in the traditional sense. It is a hypersaline lake that is basically chemical soup. Every sign, guide, and sentient being warns you, do not put your face in it. One American tourist, scoffing at the laws of chemistry, treated it like the deep end of a Holiday Inn pool. He executed a confident, face-first dive into water that is 34% salt. The result was instantaneous. The agonizing shriek that followed was reportedly audible in Jordan, as his eyes and sinuses were assaulted by liquid fire. He spent the rest of the afternoon flushing his face with fresh water, contemplating his life choices. 25. The Great Wall of China was built to keep out Mongol armies, not to serve as a CrossFit gym for overconfident tourists. One American man, bragging loudly about his marathon times, announced he was going to sprint a massive section of the wall to beat the record. He ignored the fact that the steps are steep, uneven, and centuries old. He launched into a sprint and made it less than a mile before his legs turned to jelly. He was found later, wheezing and completely defeated, needing physical assistance to walk back down. It turns out, a fortification designed to break the spirits of invading warriors is also pretty good at humbling a guy named Steve. 26. We will end this section in one of the most remote places on Earth, the vast, empty expanse of the Sahara Desert. You go there to disconnect, to see the stars, to ride a camel. But one American tourist, deep into a multi-day trek miles from civilization, began to twitch from digital withdrawal. With zero irony, he turned to his Berber guide, a man whose people have navigated the sands for millennia, and asked, "Excuse me, is there a password for the Wi-Fi out here?" He seemed genuinely annoyed that the endless dunes of sand didn't come equipped with a high-speed router and a Starbucks franchise. 27. The running of the bulls in Pamplona, Spain, is a centuries-old tradition involving adrenaline, courage, and half-ton beasts with sharp horns. It is not a petting zoo parade. One American tourist, however, treated the event like a Disney attraction, stopping in the middle of the street to set up a selfie stick for the perfect angle with the charging animals. He didn't get the photo, but he did get a very close, personal, and high-velocity introduction to bovine anatomy. He survived, but his phone and his dignity were trampled into the cobblestones. 28. Iceland's geysers are powerful geothermal vents that shoot boiling water hundreds of feet into the air. They are dangerous and protected. A tourist, however, thought he could outsmart nature for a cool video angle. He attached his GoPro to a long stick and lowered it directly into the geyser's vent, waiting for the money shot. Nature obliged. The geyser erupted with massive force, blasting his camera into the stratosphere and shattering it into a million pieces. He was later seen wandering around, asking a park ranger if there was a lost and found for electronics that had been vaporized by the Earth's core. 29. Standing in front of the Mona Lisa is a bucket list moment for art lovers. But for one American tourist, the experience was ruined not by the crowds but by his own smartphone. He was overheard complaining loudly that the painting looked grainy and low-res on his screen as he tried to zoom in. He spent 5 minutes fussing with his camera settings and brightness, never once looking up at the actual Da Vinci masterpiece hanging 2 feet in front of him. He traveled thousands of miles to critique the pixel density of his own screen, completely missing the irony that the 500-year-old oil painting actually had perfect resolution. 30. Here is a universal truth of the animal kingdom. Llamas respect personal space, and they violently enforce it. While trekking in Peru, a tourist ignored her guide's explicit warning to keep a safe distance. She leaned in uncomfortably close to a llama's face, puckering up for a cute, kissy selfie. The llama, clearly not a fan of unsolicited affection, responded by launching a massive glob of green, partially digested grass directly into her open mouth. It was a perfect biological lesson in consent. She got the selfie, but she also got a taste of what the llama had for lunch 3 hours ago. 31. Machu Picchu is a sacred Incan citadel, a mysterious city in the clouds that demands awe and silence. Or if you are a specific group of American tourists, it's just a cool backdrop for a TikTok dance challenge. They set up their tripod and began performing a synchronized hip-gyrating routine in the middle of the temple ruins. Security guards descended on them mid-twerk, promptly ejecting them from the site for disrespecting cultural heritage. They didn't get to finish their video, but they did achieve a different kind of viral fame, being the idiots who got kicked out of a wonder of the world for bad choreography. 32. In Canada, there is a quirky law under the Currency Act that actually limits how many coins you can use in a single transaction. An American tourist, unaware of this, tried to pay for a $5 coffee entirely in nickels. When the barista politely refused the mountain of metal, the tourist launched into a loud, aggressive lecture on legal tender and freedom. He cited laws he read on Facebook, while the barista cited actual Canadian federal statutes. The standoff ended with him leaving empty-handed and caffeine-free, his ego bruised by the realization that his pocket change wasn't as powerful as he thought. 33. Oktoberfest in Munich is a marathon of beer consumption, where the Mass, a liter mug, contains liquid bread that is significantly stronger than American light beer. One tourist, confident in his frat party training, challenged a table of locals to a drinking contest. He slammed his mug, mocked their pace, and then promptly passed out face first into a plate of sausages before noon. He was carried out by security like a sack of potatoes, waking up hours later with no memory of the event, but with a headache that registered on the Richter scale. 34. The Maasai warriors of Kenya perform the Adamu, a jumping dance that demonstrates strength, stamina, and agility. It is an impressive display of athleticism. After watching a performance, one American tourist, fueled by unearned confidence and perhaps a few beers, decided he could show them how it's done. He stepped into the circle and attempted to outjump men who have been doing this since childhood. He managed a clumsy, heavy-footed hop that barely cleared the dust, looking like a confused bullfrog. The warriors laughed politely, but the second-hand embarrassment from the rest of the tour group was thick enough to cut with a knife. 35. A quaint English village street, paved long before the concept of internal combustion existed, is not the natural habitat for a massive American rental SUV. One tourist, accustomed to the 8-lane highways of Texas, confidently steered his tank-sized vehicle down a lane explicitly marked unsuitable for wide vehicles. He didn't just get stuck, he achieved a state of perfect, immovable wedgedness between two historic cottages. He shut down the village for 4 hours, blocked the mail delivery, and became the most exciting thing to happen there since the invention of the scone. The locals didn't even honk. They just brought out tea to watch the show. 36. The tulip fields of the Netherlands are a stunning visual spectacle, but they are also a commercial crop that puts food on a farmer's table. To one specific tourist, however, they were nothing more than a soft, colorful mattress for her Instagram photo shoot. Ignoring the designated paths and the angry shouting of the owner, She waded deep into the blooms and proceeded to roll around like a golden retriever, crushing dozens of flowers. She got her photo, but she also destroyed about €200 worth of merchandise in her quest for digital validation, proving that influencer is sometimes a synonym for pest. 37. When spotting a Highland cow in Scotland with its emo haircut and majestic horns, the correct reaction is to take a photo from a respectful distance. The incorrect reaction, demonstrated by one American rodeo enthusiast, is to treat it like a pony at a petting zoo. He attempted to mount the 1,000-pound beast, assuming it would be docile because it looked fluffy. It was not. The cow promptly bucked him off into a dense patch of stinging nettles and thistles, while the Scottish owner watched, likely deciding that this was far more entertaining than intervening. 38. The iconic blue-domed roofs of Santorini, Greece, are actually the tops of private homes and churches, not a parkour course for influencers. Ignoring the private property and do not climb signs, an American tourist decided the roof was the only place to get his golden hour shot. As he jumped for a dynamic pose, the centuries-old plaster gave way, and he crashed right through the ceiling into someone's living room. He interrupted a local family's dinner, serving them a side dish of drywall and an awkward apology. 39. The famous ruin bars of Budapest are masterpieces of upcycled decay, filled with mismatched furniture and graffiti in dilapidated buildings. It is a carefully curated aesthetic, not an invitation to anarchy. One American tourist completely misunderstood the assignment. Thinking that ruin was a verb rather than a noun, he was caught trying to snap the leg off a vintage chair to add to the vibe. He had to be physically removed by bouncers who explained that there is a fine line between enjoying the atmosphere and active property destruction, a line he crossed with enthusiasm. 40. In the historic Gion district of Kyoto, spotting a geisha is a rare glimpse into a secretive and disciplined world. They are respected artists, not theme park mascots. An American tourist, however, spotted one and immediately turned into a feral paparazzi. He chased her down the street, blocking her path and grabbing her expensive kimono sleeve just to force her into a selfie with him. He was swiftly intercepted by local police and fined for harassment, learning the hard way that the customer is always right doesn't apply when you're treating humans like collectibles. 41. New Zealand is fiercely protective of the kiwi, a bird that is nocturnal, shy, and functionally blind. They are not circus performers. One American tourist, disappointed that nature wasn't operating on his schedule, went off-trail in a sanctuary and was caught vigorously rustling bushes to wake one up for a photo. He was treating a fragile, endangered national icon like a sleeping house cat he wanted to play with. The rangers who caught him were less than thrilled about his attempt to harass a biological treasure just to update his Facebook status. 42. A gondola ride through the canals of Venice is supposed to be the height of romance, a delicate balance of boat and water. That balance was violently disrupted when an American tourist, ignoring the frantic screaming of his gondolier, stood up to switch seats with his wife for a better selfie angle. Physics took over immediately. The boat capsized, dumping them both into the murky, questionable waters of the canal. Their romantic memory turned into a damp, smelly walk back to the hotel, smelling distinctively of centuries-old sewage and regret. 43. When renting a car in Amsterdam, the #1 rule is keep the rubber side down and the wet side away. One tourist, apparently trusting his GPS more than his own corneas, managed to drive his rental hatchback directly into a canal. He escaped the sinking vehicle safely, but his car became an instant, involuntary submarine. He stood on the canal bank, dripping wet, watching his deposit float away while creating a massive traffic jam for boats and providing free entertainment for locals who see this happen way too often. 44. In Japan, exceptional service is the standard, and tipping is often considered confusing or even rude. One American tourist, convinced that everyone wants money, left a generous stack of yen on the table after a meal. The waiter ran 3 blocks down the street to return the forgotten change. Instead of accepting the cultural difference, the tourist tried to run away, shouting, "It's for you!" It was a high-speed chase of aggressive politeness that ended with the American confused and the waiter exhausted. 45. In Tokyo, a sushi chef spends decades mastering the art of rice and fish. It is a discipline of subtlety. One American tourist, however, wasn't interested in subtlety. After being served a piece of masterpiece nigiri, he pulled a bottle of soy sauce from his backpack and drowned the fish until it was basically swimming in sodium soup. To add insult to injury, he then asked the horrified chef if they had extra spicy mayo or those little wasabi packets like at the grocery store. The chef's soul reportedly left his body right there at the counter. 46. On a Sound of Music tour in Salzburg, Austria, fans love to recreate the iconic opening scene. But one tourist took her performance too literally. She spotted a random green hill, hopped a fence, and ran out with arms outstretched, belting, "The hills are alive," at full volume. Her musical number was abruptly cut short when an angry Austrian farmer stormed out of his house to inform her that she was, in fact, trespassing on a working dairy farm. The hills weren't alive with music. They were alive with manure and litigation. 47. In Argentina, Malbec is not just a drink. It is a religion. You treat it with respect. At a high-end steakhouse in Buenos Aires, a waiter presented a bottle of their finest vintage to an American table. The tourist took one sip, frowned, and asked for a tall glass of ice to pour the wine into because it was too room temperature. The sound of the waiter's heartbreaking was audible in the kitchen. He complied with the request, but watching a $100 bottle of wine being turned into a watered-down slushie is a crime that should carry a prison sentence. 48. The Philippines runs on cash, specifically for the local jeepneys, flamboyantly decorated buses where the fare is roughly 20 cents. After enjoying a ride, an American tourist tried to pay the driver by casually handing over a Platinum American Express card. He genuinely expected the driver, who was steering with one hand and collecting coins with the other, to pull out a mobile chip reader. The driver just stared at the piece of plastic, wondering how he was supposed to swipe it on the dashboard, while the tourist asked, "What, you guys don't take points?" 49. Mexico's cenotes are stunning underground swimming holes, but they are also geological formations filled with hidden, submerged rocks. Signs clearly state "no diving" in multiple languages. An American tourist, fueled by vacation bravado and perhaps a tequila shot, decided the laws of physics didn't apply to him. He took a running leap off a high ledge to impress his friends and landed directly on a limestone shelf just below the surface. He shattered his ankle instantly, turning a beautiful afternoon swim into a complex, agonizing medical evacuation involving ropes, pulleys, and a lot of screaming. Most of these people weren't just uneducated, they were arrogant. So I want a number in the comments. At exactly which point in this list did you stop finding it funny and actually start hating these people? Was it the wildlife harassment or the disrespecting of monuments? Tell me the specific number that broke you. And if you possess the basic motor skills required to click a button, hit subscribe so we can judge more idiots together next time.